Well, let's bring in our political correspondent, Tom Harwood, who is in Downing Street for us this morning. Good morning to you, Tom. The Prime Minister setting off for Ukraine, keen, I'm sure, to move on from all of this, but the papers focusing very much on the latest revelations. This now that 4 of the parties being investigated by the Metropolitan Police involve the Prime Minister himself. What's your take? Do you think he's going to survive this?
Well, I think the papers this morning are a bit more damning than Number 10 might have expected. Of course, we've had this rollercoaster of expectations from the Prime Minister, this rollercoaster of fortunes of the Prime Minister, not only of the last few days, but really of the last 12 hours. Upon the publication of the report, many Conservative MPs were feeling that actually this wasn't so bad, there was no smoking gun, and yet when the Prime Minister went to Parliament at 3:30 p.m. yesterday, it was a bruising affair. Many people thinking that the Prime Minister judged the mood of the House wrong. He was bolshy, he made political attacks on the opposition, whereas the opposition leader was calmer and met the mood of the House, some might say, to a greater extent. However, the Prime Minister's fortunes then seemed to rise again at 6:30 p.m. last night when he spoke to members of his party, the whole Parliamentary Conservative Party, in a large meeting in a committee room in Parliament, where he laid out exactly what was going to change. He was going to bring back Sir Linton Crosby. That got a lot of cheers from his parliamentary party, and indeed a lot of the new mechanisms of policy involvement, for example bringing in Sir Graham Brady, the chairman of the 1922 committee, as a conduit for policy, whereby backbench Conservative MPs could go to Sir Graham and feed policy suggestions through to Number 10, a much more collaborative style of government that seems to be Number 10's plan for once this all washes over, if indeed it washes over, because of course the papers weren't holding back, and when they came out last night it will not have been easy reading for the Prime Minister. Even ordinarily supportive papers like the Daily Mail, for example, scathing of this Prime Minister. And yes, 12 of those parties on 8 separate dates under investigation from the Metropolitan Police. This isn't over yet.
Yeah, let's just be clear on this, Tom. 500 pages of evidence in that Gray report, 300 photographs, 70 witnesses, but we got just 12. And as you say, maybe more damning than expected. Today, the Prime Minister heads to Ukraine. I hate to say this, but a welcome distraction, presumably, for him.
Potentially so. Of course, the Prime Minister was going to go to Ukraine alongside the Foreign Secretary, who announced last night that she had caught COVID. So it's going to be a skinnier trip than was first envisioned for the Prime Minister. And of course, he'll be trying to move the conversation on, talking about the big events going on elsewhere in the world. And to be fair to the Prime Minister, there was a poll out last night by Opinium that showed that people do think that other issues are being excluded to a large extent because of this story. However, they don't blame the media for that. To some extent, they blame the Prime Minister. The numbers are not good for the Prime Minister right now. It's going to be a tough job to convince the public that that people need to move on, that we need to wait for the Metropolitan Police investigation. However, of course, it's not the public at this moment in time who he needs to convince. He needs to convince the 360-odd Conservative MPs who hold his fortune in their hands. I don't think we're seeing a rush to the 54 letters required to launch a no-confidence vote in the Prime Minister. It seems that yesterday, whilst it has created a lot of frustration, may have bought some time. However, that sword of Damocles is still hanging over the Prime Minister's neck, and of course there will be more crunch points down the line.
Tom, thank you very much indeed. We'll leave it there.